It's not exactly breaking news that the working world has changed dramatically over the past few years, but as we settle into our new normal, version 5 or 6 or 7.0 now, expectations about just what work should look like vary dramatically. While some want to be in the office all the time, others want nothing to do with leaving their home office setup. Working hours, negotiable for some, a hard and fast 9 to 5 for others. And just how much of your personal life should you share these days with colleagues, managers, or subordinates? Well, it depends on who you ask. So what will the office of the future post-pandemic look like? I'm joined by Shirley Leung, business columnist for the Boston Globe. Ranjay Gulati is a professor of business administration at Harvard Business School and author of Deep Purpose, the Heart and Soul of High-Performance Companies. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So, Ranjay, starting with you, 2.5 years in, what do people want the office of the future to look like? What are the common threads coming out of the pandemic?
I think there's several things we've learned is that the pandemic has forced a great rethink among a lot of people, right? Confronting death, confronting, dislocation, your own mortality, has forced a rethink among several segments of the population. It began actually with people near retirement. So there was a big kind of a early retirement movement, that part. But there's also happening among younger populations as well, who are some of them are expecting that, do I really need to go into work? I feel I'm comfortable where I am. And I think this is putting a lot of pressure on companies because, companies thrive on standardization. One size fits all.
Sure.
We're not used to bespoke, you get this deal and you get that deal and everybody's got a deal. And now suddenly I'm struggling to create equity, parity. And so it's really complicating things for a lot of companies.
Shirley, what do you think are the common threads? I think that Ranjay touched on one, is that it's not one size fits all anymore, but is it increased flexibility? What are the common threads from most people who've worked through this past 2.5 years?
I mean, I think it's absolutely number one is increased flexibility. Many workers got used to working from home in the beginning in their pajamas, right? They didn't even have, and then they could just zoom in. And now a lot of companies are asking workers to come back to work, and it's a hard transition. And for Gen Z, the very youngest employees, a lot of them have never come to the office. This is a completely new expectation for them, and so that's why you see them on TikTok, voicing and being outspoken about how unhappy they are at work and how there's got to be more to life than this 9 to 5 drudgery. I mean, Ranjay talked about the great resignation at the older end, and at the younger end, you're seeing quiet quitting.
By the way, the Gen Z piece in the Globe yesterday, some great quotes from the youngest of workers. We pulled together a few. It's super repetitive, meaning the 9 to 5 life. It's soul sucking. I don't want to accept my fate. You were not put on this earth to work at the office 8 hours a day for 40 years. I want to return to the number of hours in a minute, but Ranjay, employers seem to be accommodating as best they can some of these demands, for lack of a better word, from employees. But what I'm not sure about it, is it because they actually believe it's possible and good for their company, or because they see it as an emergency proposition to ensure that they can both hire and retain workers at this stage of the pandemic?
I think depending on which sector you go to, but there are a lot of companies where this is dire. Talent acquisition retention has become a dire situation, and the early warning signs are in there. And let's think about what companies need to be thinking about. We all focusing on pay. And yes, there's a segment of people who are quitting because of low wages. The low wage segment of the market is quitting because of that. But I think pay is one piece of the puzzle. People expect more out of work. So the second piece of it is, give me interesting work where I have responsibility, I'm in a positive work environment. But a larger one is, help me find purpose. Is there intrinsic value in what I'm doing? How am I contributing to something more than just shareholders? So suddenly you see expectations of people from what they want to get out of work changing. And if we can't step up to it, the companies can't, they're going to lose out on some of the best talent who will go somewhere else where they can find that.
Shirley, for the companies who don't get it, what I would say to that CEO is, if I talked to you 3 years ago and told you that a hybrid working situation was the norm, you would have said, totally impossible. It'll destroy our culture, destroy our productivity, and they would have been wrong on both counts. So are they realizing that there is a new world and they should accept it not just to be better to their workers, but because it may be better for the workplace as well?
I think a lot of companies recognize some form of hybrid workplace is here to stay. But I don't know if the what we see today, the 2 days or 3 days in the work week, work in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. I'm not sure if that's going to be our new normal. I think right now we're going through a lot of growing pains of trying to figure out what is the right balance. And you see a spectrum of kind of schedules. Some companies, their employees are only coming in once a month or 1 week a month. And so in addition to the great rethink, it's a great experimentation of scheduling.
But Ranjay, I want to stay on that topic for a second. It seems to me there is never, I don't care how far down the line it is, going to be a full return to the office. I don't know if you saw, I know you're in Greece, I don't know if you saw the Globe today. We're the state with the fourth highest rate percentage of workers who are working from home. Washington, D.C. is by far number one. We're practically tied for number two with Washington State. A story in Forbes said 90% of current workers want to work from home at least 1 day a week. That's a permanent part of the workplace going forward, is it not?
I think there is. I think there is a reset. I think there is going to be some percentage of people who will want some percentage of time they can work flexibly. But I do think what you said earlier is also important, that as we move into this world, cultures will have to change. This idea that my culture won't get wrecked, it is causing tremendous stress and strain on company culture. And when you have some people working remotely, new employees who are not acclimated, assimilated into the organization, it's really hard to make them part of the culture.
Well, not only make them part of the culture, but let's stay, Shirley, you mentioned the Gen Z workers, and I quoted from the Globe story. One would argue the workers who most need, those workers, I would argue, collaboration, mentoring in person, are the ones that are most resistant to it. So how is the twain going to meet there?
Well, I think it's what Ranjay has been studying and researching, is that companies have to find a way to help their employees develop a sense of deep purpose. Why are we at work? What is the mission here? And really inspire their employees. And those young employees need that right now, especially since many have been working from home. And so I think employees, CEOs, employers have to really think about that. Think about, how do I connect with and engage employees in a way that we haven't before.
Shirley, is there going to be a big expansion of the 4-day work week, which, as you know, is my personal crusade? Is that going to happen?
I don't know, but there's global pilots, right? Mm-hmm. On the 4-day work week, but I think that will be part of the experimentation. Is that a better way to work for, especially some of these younger workers?
Ranjay, one of the topics that I think is most important, at least in my estimation, has been underexplored, is when we ultimately settle into whatever that post-pandemic workplace is, there's going to be a lot of tension between those of us, like me, who have the freedom to work from virtually anywhere, and my coworker who has to be physically at the office or the factory or whatever the workplace is. Are companies thinking about how to resolve that internal tension?
I think you're touching on what I think is going to be a key issue going forward. How do you create equity and parity in a marketplace which is used to standardization for everybody? But it's not only that, hey, the person who has more flexibility is somehow advantaged. In other ways, they may get disadvantaged. So when it comes to their annual review and appraisals, how are they considered? Lack of face time means what for them? Lack of networks. All the water cooler networks means, can they get work done? Are they really part of the story in the organization?
Yeah, but
Out of
if I
sight.
may, I understand that they may be disadvantaged, but the one thing that is indisputable, they'll have the freedom to decide which circumstance is best for them. That second set of workers won't. That's the tension I'm talking about.
And that's a real tension. And I'll tell you what's going to happen there is that organizations are in a competition for talent right now. And those that are willing to, and you're absolutely right that they're going to either leave, but it's also going to create tension within the organization about social comparison, saying, why can, Shirley have a 3-day work week and I got to come in 5 days a week? And what does that mean for me? So it creates inequity internally in a multiple sets of ways inside the organization.
Okay, we only have a minute left. Starting with you, Shirley. It's Nostradamus time. 5 years from now, you and Ranjay are back. Well, you'll be back before, but in 5 years, you're back as well. What's the single most important change in the office of the future?
Oh, that is good. That's a really good question. Let's see. I think flexibility will be here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think I have to hand it to the Gen Z generation. They've been able to voice. They're saying things that Gen Z baby boomers weren't willing to say about their unhappiness about the workplace. So I feel like there'll be more of a dialogue between employees and employer and bosses about what's important, what's not, how to make the workplace more a better place for everybody.
Okay, Ranjay, what's the biggest difference 5 years down the line as compared to, let's say, 2019?
Work-life balance is dead. And what I mean by that is this work-life balance idea where there's work and there's life, which are compartmentalized, which means work is not life. People will expect more from work. They're going to look for meaning out of work, and work is going to be part of life. We're going to look for purpose in our work as much as we look for purpose in everything else we do outside of work. And organizations that don't deliver that are going to lose some of their top talent.
You say it quite beautifully. It sounds quite appealing. Ranjay Gulati, Shirley Leung, great to see you both. Thanks for your time.
See you in 5 years, Jim, on this topic.
See you.
You, Ranjay, too.